Hey everybody. Good to be back with you on the Free Flow CEO show. Matt Dowd, your host, along with my esteemed colleague Jonathan Shealy. How you doing today, man?
Good. Excited to be back. I love
Yeah,
holidays, but I always enjoy getting back into the saddle.
I know, right? Exactly. Yeah, we just since this is a podcast, you never know when somebody's listening to it. We just passed the 4th of July, 250th USA celebration weekend and all that went with it. How was that for you? What did you guys do?
We kind of wrote it low key during the actual holiday, but we did, my wife and we got married on the 3rd,
Okay.
11 years ago. So we kind of always
Oh, nice.
celebrate anniversary at the same time. And then,
Yeah.
so the US played their soccer game last night as well.
Yeah.
So then
If
kind
you
of
can call it that. Yeah.
extended the party and then it didn't go so well.
I know. It's kind of a downer, wasn't it?
It
Everybody
was.
just wanted to celebrate, and then it was like wah wah.
Yeah. We had a bunch of guys, from college together. Like, we don't always get together, and we did a watch party at my brother's house, and we're all together, and we're just kind of like sitting there like,
This lame. Yeah,
this is the worst.
I know. Because I was a believer in this team. I felt like they had leveled up a little bit, and they
I
just kind of
know.
looked like the old USA yesterday. I don't know.
They did not command the field at all. At any
No,
time during that game did they have a command of the field.
no. Yeah, that's all right. Back to the drawing board. That's not even what we're
Yeah.
here to talk about today. We have a much better topic than that. Here I've been thinking about this. So, and this is kind of me. Like I'm a learner. My Strengths Finder profile, top five strength. I think my number one overall is learner. So I love to absorb new information and interesting ideas, and frameworks and philosophies and all this kind of stuff. And just to know it. I mean, I like it when it's useful, obviously, but I also just like knowing new things and learning new things. And kind of what I want to talk about today, and we can go a couple different directions with it, but one of the aspects of it is like when that can become a trap and like a procrastination is like I can just learn something new but never actually do anything, you know? And so I've in my own business and here, it's like I've been more committed this year to actually just have made a decision and then stick with it instead of reevaluating it after 5 minutes, and learning something new and say, oh, then maybe this would be better because that's easy for me to do. So I think I'd like to talk about that aspect of things, like the balance between being a continuous learner and the value that goes into that, which I know you have a lot to say about that, but then also the counterbalance of when does learning or absorbing new information become just a means of procrastination or sort of a default mode that actually does not move you forward, right? And then how we balance those and go from there.
Yeah, I mean, two great topics to work through. I mean, it's just like a never-ending balancing act too. It's like, yeah, once you figure it out, you hit a new plateau on that normalcy, and then something kind of comes out of nowhere and hits you, and you got to figure out how to balance again.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. It's kind of a pendulum swingy type of thing, isn't it? It's like you can get heavy on one side or
Hmm.
the other.
Hmm.
And then it's like work your way back towards the middle. Well, so I don't know. Let me ask you this first, I guess. Have you found that to be an issue for yourself at all? Like, can you get stuck in like too far to the one side of just learning? Like with AI and everything, right now is a huge opportunity for that, I think. But in general, like, does that affect you or do you find that you balance it more easily, naturally?
Yeah, it absolutely does affect me. I think one of the biggest things about like the moment that we're in business is that there's never been an easier time to acquire new skills. And so like you can go through the process of like acquiring these new fun skills, but if there's no direct applicability to what you're doing, like why are you acquiring the skills? Is it for fun? I mean, it's like
Yeah.
back in the day when we were building on, I don't know, what was the video game where you like built your own city?
Oh,
Like
Sim City or
not
something?
not yeah, Sim City, right? Like we
Not
were out building
Minecraft,
cities for no
yeah.
good reason.
Yeah.
yeah, pre Minecraft, right? Like,
Yeah.
like we're out here building stuff for there's no reason. We just did it for fun. And there's a tendency, I think, for business owners to build for no particular reason
Hmm.
these entire arms of their business that have there's no tie to their core offer. There's no applicability to their day job, if you want to say it that way.
Hmm.
But I also get caught up in certifications, right?
Right.
Like it's easy to want to
Yeah.
acquire new certifications and they're expensive. They take a long time,
Hmm.
and I may know the connection to my business, but does it matter to my clients?
Right.
Sometimes it does and sometimes it doesn't. And so like I think that was a trap that I was able to escape um,
Yeah.
about a year and some change ago, where I decided, all right, so like, yeah, it's good for me to be a part of a community that's always growing, but I'm at the point where I have to put all of this into practice
Hmm.
um, instead of just acquiring new information.
Yeah. Yeah, totally. I think that a lot of entrepreneurs are wired similarly, or venture oriented people, where it's like the new thing is exciting, and it's part of like how we operate and it's how we're oriented, right? So we always tend to be able to, um, I think on the emotional side, feel like this is going to be helpful because you can sense what's useful about it. But then can you actually like write it down and put it to a business plan? Like it's going to be useful because it's what gonna do this for me, X, Y, and Z, and it's gonna have this result. Yeah, at least I think, like you can project a real result. I feel like that's the trap I fall in. Like allow my emotional excitement about it to take the place of like an actually well thought out plan.
Yeah, I agree with that. I mean, I think that for an entrepreneur, uh, there's like an entrepreneurial headspace that can see, like, has the vision to understand why something works. It's why, like, I love when a good ad comes across, like during the Super Bowl or something like that, where you're like, oh, that just clicked. Like, that was
Hmm.
perfect. Like, and if I had to get down into describe why it worked, it might be hard for me to make that connection. But as a business person, as someone who's involved with
Yeah.
messaging and marketing and product offerings and pricing models and things like that, like it just kind of clicks. So when you
Yeah.
see a new piece of information, new piece of technology, it clicks. But the leadership responsibility that you have for yourself and for your business is to hold off on like committing and being derailed from your priorities. And
Right.
so like I've kind of developed this flywheel of information intake for
Okay.
myself that helps me stay on track. Um,
Ooh.
that includes broad like a broad experience for information and for enjoyment even, specifically through my book intake and my
Okay.
podcast intake, so that I can continue to experience new things while not like gaslighting myself for not implementing things immediately.
Hmm.
When I need it, I can come back to it. But instead of having this like cloud of like this really intense feeling of like you're missing out on the benefit if you're not implementing it. Sometimes I'm not ready to implement. Sometimes I need to let it percolate, let it
Yeah.
fit. So like reading faster, reading more, and then coming back to something when it makes sense for my business is the rhythm that I've tried to develop for myself.
Gotcha. So, yeah, what is your rhythm like? Like, how much information or, books and that type of thing are you consuming? Podcasts.
Well, I try to separate like three different channels of intake. I've like physical book reading, I have audible reading,
Okay.
right, which I'm listening, and then I have podcast listening. Like, and they're
Okay.
different. And then I guess there's a fourth too if you want to talk about like YouTube. right? Where it's like
Sure.
that can be a rabbit hole if you're not careful. Like you can go down that one real fast. Um,
Yeah.
but for reals, but for my practical purposes, it's the three. And
Okay.
um, my podcasts happen when I'm doing something else. So like if I'm working in the yard, I live in Wisconsin, so if I'm shoveling the driveway, podcasts happen when I'm not 100% actively involved in the thing I'm listening to. Um, because there's like this passive experience with a podcast that's good. Like you're listening to someone, maybe they're having a good story or they're in a good conversation. Sometimes it's straight download or like a history podcast or something like that, but not as often. But for books intake, so like that's kind of the passive version. But for a book intake, I'm careful to listen to books before I read them in hard copy, and then I
Hmm.
only go back and read a book in hard copy if I want to do something about the book. Because with the way that lending libraries work, like I can listen to a lot of books without having to purchase them all
Mm-hmm.
in whatever format that is. Like my local library has books, and so
Yeah.
like I try to either read in hard copy or in Audible 30 books a year,
Hmm.
and I average over the last 10 years 15 books. But I have to rotate through genres to keep my mind active, and so that looks like biographies, histories, yeah, business practical books. And since I've been involved in church leadership, I've started to incorporate like theology and practice, and so like it really rounds out my intake. And if sometimes I'll have like a recommendation that gets thrown in that doesn't fit into those channels, but those regular channels of intake help me balance my intake, because a biography will take me a lot longer to listen to than whatever Mike Michalowicz has published recently.
Mm-hmm.
Like, and I love some of these authors, but they publish a lot of books like Donald Miller and Patrick Lencioni. Like they've got a book every year or every other year, and so it's hard to keep up with those publishing and be able to do something about it. So what I try to do is I'm not going to read
Right.
more than 5 or 6 business books a year, and I fill in the rest of that with, like, you might even call this like an ethic for the humanities, right? Like where I'm trying to listen to a
Hmm.
classic like The Tale of Two Cities or a Dickens novel, or
Yeah.
another of the Dickens novels that are like thick and tough to listen to sometimes, but they really round out my experience of storytelling and humanity and just like cultural awareness. But
Yeah.
then I'll read something like a biography, which is incredibly practical because as a leadership development coach, I'm listening to stories of people who have had a life that worth covering in a biography. And so like there's practical wisdom there, and there's a story involved and how it unfolds and it not being a straight line.
Yeah.
So then when I come back to listening to
Hmm.
a again, I can fit the content into my brain somewhere and turn the corner to, and this is how I'm going to do it with my company, and this is how I would do it if a client needed it,
Yeah.
this is what I would, this particular section I would come back to and build a particular training session off of, instead of it always having to be a direct relation to my business, because most of these business books have a unique client profile they're talking to, and I
Mm-hmm.
don't fit most of those client profiles at this particular point in my company. So I don't have to worry about it being a direct one-to-one, but it certainly helps me with business principles, with, maybe it's because my background's not in like business school, like I don't have an MBA.
Yeah.
So it helps me round out some of those things that I didn't have, and from a practical point instead of just a textbook point of view too.
Yeah. Because it's coming from like people's real world experience a lot of time. Yeah.
Right. Right.
No, that's good. Well, so yeah, I like this idea of, I guess, building sort of a repository or like a base layer of just knowledge. Or it's, I think you were talking about this earlier before we went live. Like, it's not even the knowledge itself. Sometimes it's like the knowledge of the knowledge. That's kind of what I took away from what
Yeah.
you were saying. It's like, because the cliche, like, you don't even know, you don't know what you don't know, right? Like we don't know, we don't
Right.
know. But knowing that there's something to know can be helpful because then if we come across something, oh, at least we can go revisit the source and then actually go dig in, like read the hard copy instead of just listening to the audible, so to speak.
Right. Like I listened to a biography of the House of Morgan, right? The banking House of Morgan a couple of years ago. And like
Okay.
I had to look up so many terms because I'm not in the finance world and I'm not
Uh,
in the finance space. But I learned so much about the American economy, learning about that family that has like taken me down these rabbit trails that have really practical applications to my life and to my business. But I wouldn't, there's no way to reverse engineer that. Like I can't go and say, "Hey, go read this biography for these reasons." No, that's not how it works. You have
mhm.
to continue to build and like expand your web of information of more information. And I'm not a finance expert by any stretch of the imagination now, so I'm not saying that's
Sure.
the purpose. But
Right.
again, like you said, my exposure to that information and to those ideas has given me a more well-rounded approach to knowing what those things are. And
Hmm.
I can now hold a conversation with someone who is in the finance space much better because I'm not having to double check a meaning in my mind. I'm not having to like, do I know that
Or
term?
pretend you
No,
know
I
what I'm talking
most of those
about.
things I can catch up with now because I was exposed to them in a format that made sense.
Huh. Well, yeah, yeah, that's cool. And then, so do you sort of curate your reading list ahead of time? I mean, do you have particular things that you know you're wanting to learn, like the direct learn this and apply it now? Because, it's so easy to just get caught up in like, I don't know if you're on social media much, especially. It's like they're always throwing stuff at you. This is the next thing you need to know. And then with AI and everything, it's like
Yeah.
there's a ton of stuff out there. So how do you, because right there can be too much. Like you can try to do too many things and end up doing none of them or none of them well. So I don't know, how do you approach it? Do you have
Yeah,
a specific thing that you know you're trying to learn and implement?
most of the time, yeah. Most of the time. If it's a business practical book, I've started using the double and triple recommendation rule that I
Okay.
won't read a book. I'll put it on my list, but I won't read a book until two or three people have told me I need to.
People start talking about it. Yeah.
And that helps trim down the list of things that I like are like hot topics. Um, and like I'll make an excuse at times. Okay, so like maybe it was a year ago, a year and some change ago that um oh, what's his name? Will Guidara. The Will Guidara book from Unreasonable Hospitality. Like
Uh-huh.
it just took over the business world for a year, like for a whole series, right? So like then you have to read something at that point because now it's about common language, right?
Yeah. This would
And
be up
I
with
heard him
yeah.
speak. Right, like so I heard him speak and like people were covering his content, but I'm like I want to be able to have first source knowledge of this stuff. So like at some point you may have to like read a book or skim a book just so that you can know what people are saying truthfully and like
Yeah.
passively or and like so that kind of thing. So like that kind of is an anomaly, but every once in a while that happens. Um where it's like, "Oh, dude, everyone's got to read this book." And so but for the most part, if two or three people tell me in separate contexts to read a book, there's some validity to it. And the thing is that they will give you their biggest takeaway when they give you a recommendation. So if I tell you, for instance, if I tell you to go read, um, let's see, what's a book that I would tell you to go read?
Yeah.
Okay, I'll go tell you to read The Talent Code. All right, so The Talent
Okay.
Code is written several years ago by Daniel Coyle. It's about athleticism and not just athleticism, about performance and the ability to be excellent in your craft. And he reverse engineers why there's so much talent coming from particular places. Like, so how can something that breaks the mold for all the external factors why there should be a lot of talent coming from this place all of a sudden produces a ton?
Hmm.
Like in the 90s there was a tennis school in Russia that produced a ton, and then there was like a music studio in Dallas that produced like five massive hits, like with Britney Spears level massive hits.
Okay.
And
Interesting.
and so he's like reverse engineering it. And so like I would tell you, go read that book to undo the way that we think about um, opportunity, overnight success, and leadership, like and like potential. Like these are things that I would tell you. Go read this book to undo what you think
Okay. Yeah,
about
yeah.
these things. That's how I would recommend it to you. So if you recommended a book to me, you're gonna give me the same like little snippet, and then that gives me a framework for what I'm gonna learn from this book. And if two or three people do it, you get this through line from those two or three people, and you go, okay, now I'm listening for this thing through this book for this book instead of
Sure.
like browsing at Barnes and Noble and figuring out, all right, so here's like a book, and it's in the recommended section, but I don't know
Here's,
why.
uh-huh. Well, yeah, because it has nothing to do
Because
with
I guess
you,
I
whereas
do
the
actually
people
still
that
shop at Barnes and Noble in person.
I was like, yeah, do people actually do that stuff? That's funny. No, but there is something to that. Like a person you're in a conversation with, presuming they know you at all, even if they're not. I mean, the people recommend books because they like them themselves and they were helpful to them, but at the same time, there's probably some connection to you. Like they're thinking of you in some way specifically that would benefit you because they know you a little bit, right? I just think
Exactly.
that's like is
Exactly.
likely.
Right. Because people want you to learn something that they learned, and they want to. I mean, I don't mean this in a manipulative way, but people want to come across as smart, and so they're like, "Hey, this is something that I learned. You should learn it
Sure.
too."
Yeah, yeah, yeah. Totally. It's
And
sort of
so like,
validation.
here, let me save you the headache of having to learn this thing by reading this book.
Yeah. Well, there's that. But I also think they're recommending it to you like knowing something about you. Like if they just felt like you would have no interest in it whatsoever, they might not make the recommendation. But like you're saying, when two or three people, it starts to converge like that. I don't know. I just think maybe there's something to that, that it has something to do with you as well.
Yeah.
Like where you're at or what they
Yeah,
know
I would
about
agree
you.
with that. Right,
So
because if you're out there and you're telling people what you're about,
yeah,
and having real conversations with people, they're gonna go, "Hey, yeah, I remember something about that. That was in this book, or and that was in
yeah.
this
Like,
author."
oh, you should
That kind
read
of thing.
this, right?
And
Because yeah, it has something to do with you.
right, it has something to do with you, and like this is something I learned about that thing, so you should learn it too. And
Yeah,
in some ways, it's like it's an act of kindness and community to say, and when you do, come back and we'll talk about it, right?
yeah, yeah. Right.
Like we'll have a better conversation because you read it too, and we'll have shared language around this topic.
For sure. Yeah, exactly. Yep. No, I mean, I think it's like goes without saying that what was your phrase that you said? Readers are leaders or something like that? Or leaders,
Yeah,
which way is it
leaders
actually
or
going?
readers.
Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah, I think it's well documented and validated, right? So we want to continually be learning and I like this idea that you're talking about. It's almost like background, a lot of it. It's just building this. I don't know. I have this image in my head. It's like, a bigger, stronger base that we're operating from because of it. It's not like you're taking everything that you're learning and having to consciously bring it to the forefront and apply it directly, immediately. You know, it's just
Well,
like more
I think
context.
about it like a workout. Yeah, exactly. Like context. Like I think about it like a workout. I get this tendency. You're probably the same thing with me. Like, so you're a golfer and you have this mindset of things that your body should be able to do to perform your golf swing well. And you know that it's related to certain muscle groups. And so there's two ways of thinking about working out for golf or for any athleticism. You can either isolate those muscles
Hmm.
for a particular purpose, or you can do whole body training that supports your whole body system. And it's not an either or, it's a both and. So, for instance, let's say you want more leg power for push off. You're going to
Hmm.
have to do squats. You're going to have to do deadlifts. You're going to have to do kettlebell carries or something. You're going to have to do stretches. You're going to have to do lunges. These are isolating your leg muscles, but you also should be doing your aerobic activity. You should be running. You should be doing things for the rest of your core, because it's not like your legs are built in isolation. And so like as
Right.
we build our minds, it's the same thing. Like we do at times need to improve, like in the business system. Maybe we need to do better at accounting. We need to do better at product offers. We need to do better at leadership development. We need to do better at systems and operation thinking. And so
Yeah.
there's an important aspect of isolating that, but it's also important to build the whole structure, your capacity. It's like building your brain power in the capacity to learn, not just the thing that you're learning.
Oh, interesting. Yeah. 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 Right. So you're like strengthening the mechanism as much as
Hmm.
filling it up, I guess.
Right.
Okay. Well, so then I kind of go back to this thing though of like where, at least for me, I can get in the trap of just learning, like wanting to learn the next new thing. And what's happened with me is it's caused me at times to not then stick with, like, create a game plan and stick with it. It's like learning, and I'm talking about learning new techniques, or it's not even learning like the classic learning new information, but like um almost like rethinking my approach, or rethinking the business model to a certain degree, and
Yeah.
just not like
We
deciding on something and sticking with it. Like, where do you, I don't know if this is a good contrast. I don't know if this is like a direct contrast what we're talking about, but part of where I was coming at with this topic coming from originally was the idea of like just staying in a continuous learning loop, but not letting it actually take hold, not slowing down long enough to, learn the one thing and
mm,
implement it and stick with it long enough to make it actually work,
sure.
you know?
And I think that goes to like, yeah, that goes to like what are you gonna, how do you turn the corner for your brain? Like everyone's brain works a little different on that like corner
Hmm.
turn. And I think some of it has to do, so like I'll tell you, for me, for one of the practical things that has helped for me is that if I'm reading a book for a purpose, to like, and this is because maybe I've got a, I'm stuck on a particular topic, or I'm, maybe I can't even figure out what resource to find to help me in this particular area. um, it's isolating the problem is the first step for me. I have
Hmm.
to isolate the problem. So sometimes that means conversations, sometimes that means a podcast, sometimes that means an analysis, like a deeper analysis of what is going on, like what's the reality check, the assessment level before diving into the new. And
Yeah.
sometimes what that happens is like when I do that assessment check, I'm like, actually, I'm not even doing what I said I was going to do.
Hmm.
So it's not a system failure, or it's not a philosophy failure, it's a system failure. And this is what I like about James Clear's Atomic Habits. Like he's saying, like, you're not breaking it down to the small enough moment, the small enough trigger to do the right thing. Like you're depending on the motivation in the long haul instead of in the execution in the in the small details, and the discipline in the details.
Hmm.
And that has been really helpful for me, because I too end up thinking about the long-term benefit, or the vision, and the effectiveness that I want to end up being like. And I can forget that actually that vision, you get to that vision with daily details. And so much of that is the difference between I have decided to do this and I'm the kind of person that does this.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And that's his phrase, I'm the kind of person that.
Yep.
And when I
Yep.
started thinking and using that phrase for myself, like it's the difference between, for me practically, here's one. It's the difference between I'm the kind of person that wants to get up at 5 every morning, and the kind of person that gets up at 5 every morning.
Yeah. That's an
Or
identity
another
shift.
one, like, yes, it's an identity shift. So
Yeah.
instead of I'm doing this thing because the book said to do it and the author said, yeah, if I got to do it,
Yeah.
you got to do it. No, it becomes, no, this is a part of who I am. The same thing for me. I
Yeah.
started working out on holidays.
You know why I started working on holidays? So that I don't binge all the negative stuff on holidays. Because
Right.
you can't, right? If you're going to go for a 4 mile run, you can't be loading up on the junk before, and you don't feel like it afterwards either. And so like it's the lifestyle shift that makes the execution happen.
Yep. And it's well, what that does too is it like takes willpower out of the equation. I think because I think what's happening there, I love that whole James Clear's approach. When I read that, I was really struck by it too. Like I have decided to do this versus I am a person who does this, you know? Like when you're saying I have decided to do this, the long version of that is I don't view myself as a person who does this, but I'm trying to force myself to do it anyway. So then you're at odds with yourself and you're trying to
Yeah.
use willpower and like when I was a financial advisor, I talked about this all the time. Like willpower doesn't work. You have to build the system that gets you where you want to go. Because like if you decide to get in better shape and you present yourself every day with a chocolate milkshake and a protein shake, you know, like have to make that decision again every day. How long until you start making the decision that actually tastes better? You know, it's just inevitable. So
Right.
it's like make the decision once. And I think the identity shift is like that. It's like when you start to view yourself as the person who does this, then you're just going to do it. And you're not going to be fighting against yourself to do it.
And I think what happens too is like there's a difference between someone who says, I don't like doing this, and this actually isn't who I want to be. So, like
Mm-hmm.
when you talk about what happens if there does need to be a renegotiation of that aspiration, like what happens if that goal was a faulty goal, or that
Sure.
system that you thought was going to be effective isn't actually being effective. When you make it an identity shift, it becomes more distasteful the further down you go versus more lovely the further down you go. Like I'll tell you that I did not like getting up early, but it's not the getting up early part, but it's all the benefits that come with getting up early that I didn't understand and I couldn't have told you. Now, if I
Mm-hmm.
didn't use my morning effectively, there would be no reason for me to think that it's a good thing to get up at 5. And sometimes if you're doing your performance around the task is the problem, and sometimes the performance is the problem itself. So like for instance with the learning membership groups and certification things that we talked about earlier, like being the kind of person who is in these community groups at some point expired in its effectiveness and its helpfulness,
Mm.
right? So like I can claim identity with these membership groups, but it wasn't doing anything, and at some point that identity, it clicked that it was not a good idea, and then it made it easier to turn it off, right? To no longer be in that identity, to say, all right, I got to do something different. But until you feel that ick, you don't you're not going to make the difference, you're not going to make the change.
Yeah. 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 Because then it becomes like an internal, yeah, sort of an internal motivation versus that whole external trying to just force yourself to do something different. Okay, let me ask one more question before we wrap this up. How do you decide? Because here's what I see a lot with entrepreneurs that I work with and business owners. You know, it's like I got to learn another new thing because my business needs it. It needs to happen. And let's just assume, for the sake of argument, that they're right. Like the things that we're talking about, that they're talking about needing to do need to happen. How do you make the determination of when to learn it yourself and when to get help and just like hire help, you know, hand it off to your team or a contractor or something? Or even more nuanced, how much of it to learn versus, you know, how deep to go essentially versus how to, you know, where to stay shallow and just know enough. Like, let's talk about that. How do you think through that and make those kind of decisions?
Man, I think that's a real challenge. It's a good question because the smaller the team, the more pressure the leader is going to feel on this particular topic. And
Mm-hmm.
um, especially when a company is built off of the back of someone like a founder, an inventor, someone who's created a solution, a framework, where they have been technical with their hands before, right? Like something that they've done has been the value add to the clients. And so like they understand the affirmation that comes with learning, acquiring a new skill set, and like that feedback loop, that positive feedback loop. But the problem is it depends on which chair you're sitting in the company. Like what is your responsibility? What are the results that you are required to
Mm-hmm.
perform with? And I like the way you positioned it, because if you're a manager over this task, you do have to get to know it enough to lead that contractor or that new employee or that someone who you've delegated it to.
Yeah.
It has to be something that you can effectively continue to promote. So I think there's a bit of like, I recommend leaders learning side by side with people.
Mm.
There's a relational benefit to shoulder work, not just a business practical, like not just so that you can learn how to manage or just so that person can learn how to perform, but like you build the connection of failing together, of learning the same trip ups and the same like shortcuts together,
Right.
with your like subordinate or with the manager. So like I think there's a rough the rough filter that I use is how much time is it going to take away from my thing that I'm supposed to be doing. So as a coach, as an advisor, that means I'm supposed to be advising companies, coaching leaders, writing the frameworks, developing the theory to help my people the most. So anything that takes away from that, even if it's required for my company,
Yeah.
is something that I have to do something about. Like I've got to be able to delegate it at some point. And so, of course, there's constraints, there's financial constraints, there's time constraints. But the whole goal should be to be able to offload that, automate it, delegate it, and that, like even the way that I work with Free Flow CEO, like the relationship that we have, I
Yeah.
don't want to be excellent and incredible in go high level,
Right.
right? Like I
Right.
want you guys to do that so that I can lead my clients well, so that I can perform the responsibilities and give them an incredible customer service experience, so that I can rely on you to help me with discernment and say, yeah, this is a good idea. And no, John, that's not something you need to get into. Like, let me take it
Mm-hmm.
off your plate. That I think that's the framework that you got to live in. Like our friend Dan Sullivan and Ben Hardy, like who, not how. It's not just it's not
Totally.
the technique. It's the who can do it, and is it the right person. And what I love about that framework, the who, not how phrase, is that it assumes that it does need to be done. A lot
Yes.
of times
Right.
the founder is right. It does need to be done, but you're asking the wrong question.
Yeah. How do I do it versus who can do it, or how do I like to
Hmm.
coach people to ask how do I get, like, make your default thinking, how can I get this done without me? How can this get done without me? Right? And
Hmm.
if at all possible, of course, depending on what it is. But no, that's good. I appreciate that viewpoint. It's a delicate balance. I mean, at any level, I think, especially in the smaller business side, for sure, though, right? Because it's like you can't just detach. You got to have enough connection to it to be able to evaluate if it's even good, the finished product, whatever it is.
Right.
Like this is actually going to work. Um, yeah. Well, I don't know. Any last thoughts or other things to throw in before we?
I think I think just practically speaking, it's not just about like the whole like phrase leaders or readers. It's not technically the whole act of reading that is the weight behind that phrase. And even as we carry it practically into like a new thing for your business, like artificial intelligence or influencer marketing, like when it came out, was a huge thing for people to try to figure out. Any
Mhm.
new piece of technology, any new like requirement from like a legislative perspective, like all these things are important and they're good, but you have to have a model for decision making that allows you to stay in your seat while the goals of the company still being accomplished.
Yeah,
And I think that's what partners are for too. Someone to bounce off ideas as a peer. Hey, what are you doing with? How are you interacting with? Who's doing this for you? It makes referrals that much more important.
for sure. Yeah, like your network. I think I want to throw in one thing too, which is like the idea, don't get too enamored by the bright lights, and the squirrel syndrome of this new thing and this next new thing, especially with AI and tech. It's like your core competency, the thing you're really good at that you've been able to deliver, and that's the core of your service or your business or your offer or whatever, it still carries the most weight. Does that make sense? It's like stick to what you like really moves the needle. And add in helpful things as you go, of course, and learn and grow and expand. But like, I think maybe I'm talking to myself more than anybody else, but it's like, don't, you talking about being gaslighted, if that's the term, but the pressure of like having to implement all this new stuff, and learn all these new things all the
Mhm.
time. I mean, it's helpful, yes, but to a certain extent, it's like stick with what you know works also to a certain extent, like stay true to that core. I think would be my advice here. Um, so again, it's the blend, it's the balance of learning and growth and staying in your lane, So
Mhm. Mhm.
sage advice, from from us here. Um, Nice. Well, good stuff as usual. I think we can wrap it up there. Um, I just decided that we need to have a URL for this, the Free Flow CEO show. I'm 99% sure it's available. So we're just going to say that's the place to point everybody. And, if it doesn't work, we'll come back and re-edit the end of this episode or whatever. But that's where you can find, we'll have links to everything we talked about: Jonathan's business, Sheely Executive Consulting, Free Flow CEO, my automation agency, references that we made, and books and links and podcasts and all that good stuff. There's tons of good stuff out there. So that's where you can find us, and we'll see you next time.